Gears is about telling interactive stories. Few great stories lack moments of conflict, especially with a system that supports a supernatural, superhero, and anime. As such, it supports combat. The key is not that combat is different, just that things tend to move faster than outside of combat. Skills still take the same length, but a person could do multiple combat actions in the same time. One still moves at the same speed, but people are less worried about your kilometers per hour and more your meters per minute. To address this condensed period of time, the combat round and combat action exist. A combat round is 30 seconds long. A combat action varies as each character has a different number of actions. Each character's combat action is equal to 30 seconds divided by their total combat actions. This can cause a character with one action per round to do exactly one thing after every 30 seconds. It can cause another character with 10 actions to do one action every 3 seconds. This takes a little work by the game master, as these actions should be intertwined with the actions of other characters in order to present the best depiction of using these abilities. Thus, the game master will flit from character to character, determining what each character does with their one action before moving to the next. Once all characters have performed all of their actions, the process starts again, but as a new action round. The classic initiative found in most role-playing games is gone. A game master may have players roll a d20 for simultaneous actions or make their own order of priority. Remember, characters only get to perform an action after the required seconds have passed. As such, it does not matter if the character rolled a 20. If they have one action and another has 4, the other will get 3 actions before the first player gets to go. If a character elects to perform something that takes multiple actions, they must wait until the time for the total actions has elapsed. Most events in the game will occur at the standard action round speed of 30 seconds. However, when combat begins, things tend to happen a lot faster. When this happens, characters will need to utilize their combat actions and the combat action round sequence. This is how a typical combat round will occur. There are approximately half a dozen default things that can be performed by anyone regardless of training. These combat actions are then modified by combat abilities, giving them advantages and combinations unique to each character. If you declared a strike action, you will need to roll a d20 and add all applicable modifiers, such as the character's bonuses from strike or other related combat abilities. The roll will also be modified by penalties from the target, such as parry, dodge, resistance modifiers, or protection modifiers. Most strike rolls start with a difficulty of 10, and any range or vision modifiers. If the roll, after modifiers, is higher than the difficulty, the strike is successful. A weapon that hits but inflicts no damage due to hardened rules, protection modifiers, or resistance modifiers do not use the miss rules. The strike hit its target, it just didn't do damage, or the damage was absorbed by armor. It should be noted that some weapons and abilities grant penetration bonuses. Penetration values negate resistance and protection modifiers. However, if the penetration value is greater than a target's total of resistance and protection modifiers, then the opponent simply receives no resistance and protection modifiers, and no further bonuses are received from the penetration value of the attack. If successful, the character dealing damage will roll for how much damage was dealt. Punches and kicks usually do 1d4 damage, unless otherwise stated. Weapons will have their damage listed with the weapon. Otherwise, treat the weapon damage as 1. Some items have a natural resistance modifier. If the strike is successful, divide the damage by the target's resistance modifier, but only if the modifier is greater than 0. Some items also have the hardened trait. For every rank of hardened, the target has reduced the damage by 5. Damage may not be reduced below 0 by this trait. Always apply damage reductions from the hardened trait after the resistance modifier. Combat introduces several new terms. The first is range increments. Ranged combat is very similar but comes with more terms. These new terms that are introduced are payload, reload, concentrated spray, unconcentrated spray, and visual increments. Every weapon has a range increment, and every person has a visual increment. Melee weapons are easy to spot because they usually have a range increment less than 2 meters or the length of the weapon. Range increments cause a 1-point penalty for each multiple of the original increment of distance the target is from this character. A weapon with a range increment of 10 meters will receive no penalties for targets less than 10 meters, -1 for targets up to 20 meters, -2 for targets up to 30 meters, etc. The same rules apply to the visual increment for people. In this regard, range weapons often suffer double negatives, that of the range increment negative and the visual increment negative, but skills and equipment can quickly compensate for this. Most ranged weapons will have a payload value. This is how often the weapon can be used for ranged strikes before a reload is required. Once a weapon has been used for a number of ranged strikes equal to this number, the character must reload the weapon to use it for any further ranged strikes. Of course, the weapon may still be used as a blunt weapon for melee strikes. The reload value is how many actions the character must sacrifice to reload the weapon. Additionally, the character must possess the appropriate ammunition to reload the weapon. At this point, one might wonder about strikes that miss. For most melee weapons, a miss is usually going to go into empty air, and for most ranged weapons, the spent cartridge is going to find a home in an inanimate object of no value. Sometimes, combat is going to be very tight, with people very close together. When this situation is occurring, there is a good probability that a missed stab or expended shot might hit another person, whether this is a friend, foe, or innocent. Gears has optional rules for that. Other non-strike actions that happen in combat are a dodge action that makes it more difficult to be hit, a parry action that redirects the hit from you to something else, a move action that lets you use a movement rating so you can be somewhere else, a rest action that addresses fatigue, a siphon action to recover the magical fuel Esper, and a simultaneous strike that forfeits defensive actions to negate the opponent's defensive actions. Gears is an action exclusive to combat called the aimed strike action. Performing aimed strike actions will provide a bonus to the next non-aimed strike action, similar to someone taking their time to carefully align their weapon. Some abilities may increase this bonus. This action only stacks 5 times. Another action exclusive to combat is the called strike action. A called strike action is a modified strike action, allowing this character to select a specific item or location on their target. The process and effects are best left for slightly more advanced play. The rules are not optional, but one should get used to the flow of combat before performing called strikes or trick shots. Weapons with the blast radius trait may find a home in an object of no importance, but their blast radius still matters, possibly inflicting damage on those nearby. Attacks that have a blast radius inflict damage over a large area through explosives and/or fragmentary debris. These attacks will have a blast radius increment listed. If the individual performing the attack successfully strikes his intended target, the target and anything within the first blast radius increment automatically takes damage equal to the listed damage. Items up to 5 range increments from the blast must have the user of the attack make a successful strike action with only the bonuses to strike provided by the attack and a penalty equal to the number of range increments the target is from the original blast site. Some ranged weapons have the automatic trait. This represents the ability of the weapon to fire several rounds very fast. It will usually be listed with a number. This notifies the user the maximum rounds they may fire at once. When a character elects to use the automatic trait, they must choose to either an unconcentrated spray or a concentrated spray, and select a modifier up to the value of the automatic trait. A concentrated spray will cause additional damage equal to the value of the selected modifier. An unconcentrated spray will gain a bonus to strike equal to the value of the selected modifier. A character may never elect to use a modifier higher than what is left in the payload for the weapon. After the strike roll is made, reduce the current payload by the value of the modifier. Gears also includes rules for the sudden loss of a lot of structural points, vital points, targeted locations, and specific kinds of damage. These are optional and more advanced than needed for beginning players. Most of the work here is done by the Game Master. The most important rules for players to remember about damage are that things break when they no longer have structural points. Characters lose structural points first, then vital points. A character can survive with no structural points, but dies if they have no vital points. As you listen to these videos, remember that the most important thing is to have fun. As such, I hope you choose to gear up.